Every great empire in history thought it would last forever. Every single one of them was wrong. And here's the scary part. They all collapsed in the exact same way. 7 stages. Same order, every time. Spain did it. Britain did it. The Soviet Union did it. And right now, the United States is sitting at stage 5. Most people have no idea what that even means. Today, I'm going to walk you through this collapse pattern. Show you exactly what happened to the empires that came before, and let you decide for yourself where things are headed. Because once you see this pattern, you genuinely cannot unsee it. Let's go back to the beginning. Every empire starts at stage 1, and it always looks the same. A country finds an edge. Maybe it's military power, maybe it's a new trade route, maybe it's technology nobody else has yet. Spain in the 1400s found gold in the Americas. Britain in the 1700s built the most powerful navy on Earth. The Soviet Union after World War II had nuclear weapons and a space program that terrified the entire Western world. The United States? It had all of it. Industrial power, military dominance, the dollar, Hollywood, Silicon Valley. Stage 1 is when a country becomes the country. The one everyone else looks up to, trades with, copies, and fears. Stage 2 is expansion. The empire starts spreading, economically, militarily, culturally. Spain colonized most of South America. Britain controlled a quarter of the entire planet's land at its peak. The USSR expanded across Eastern Europe into Asia, propping up governments in Cuba, Vietnam, Afghanistan. The US, military bases in over 80 countries. McDonald's on every continent. The dollar used in almost every international trade deal on the planet. This is the peak. This is the we run the world phase. But here's where things start to quietly break. Stage 3 is overextension. The empire starts spending more than it makes. It fights wars it doesn't need to fight. It tries to control things too far from home. Spain started bleeding money, maintaining colonies across 2 continents. Britain fought wars from Africa to Asia to the Middle East and slowly started going broke doing it. The Soviet Union poured billions into Afghanistan in the 1980s, a war they could not win, and it drained them. The US spent over $8 trillion on wars in the Middle East after 2001. That's not a typo. 8 trillion. And the country didn't get richer from it. Stage 4 is where the cracks show up at home. The money that was being spent outside, it stops coming back inside. Infrastructure gets old, schools get worse, hospitals get more expensive. The gap between the rich and everyone else gets massive. In Spain, regular people were starving while the royal family was building palaces. In the late days of the British Empire, huge parts of London were in poverty while the government was funding colonies. In the Soviet Union, store shelves were empty. Regular people had nothing, while the government was spending on military parades and nuclear missiles. In America today, 40% of adults cannot cover a $400 emergency expense. The bridges are old. The roads are crumbling. Life expectancy is actually going down, something that basically never happens in a developed country. Unless something is seriously wrong. Now we get to stage 5, and this is where the US sits right now, according to historians like Peter Turchin, Ray Dalio, and others. Stage 5 is internal division. This is when the people inside the empire stop agreeing on basically anything. Not just politics, everything. What's true, what's fair, who belongs, who the enemy is. Spain had it. The Catholic Church and the Crown were fighting each other for control while the colonies pushed back. Britain had massive class conflict in the early 1900s. Strikes, protests, political chaos, right before it started losing its empire. The Soviet Union had internal divisions so deep that entire republics wanted out, and eventually they got out. 15 countries broke away almost overnight in 1991. In the US right now, trust in the government is at historic lows. A 2023 Gallup poll found that only 26% of Americans trust the government to do the right thing most of the time. Political violence has gone up. Media consumption has split so hard that 2 people are living in 2 different versions of reality. This isn't just arguing about taxes. This is a society struggling to agree on basic facts. That's stage 5. That's the warning sign that every empire before has ignored and paid for it. Stage 6 is losing ground internationally. Other powers start filling the spaces the empire leaves behind. Spain watched Britain and France take over trade routes it used to control. Britain lost India in 1947, and after that it was a domino effect. Country after country left the empire within years. The Soviet Union lost its influence in Eastern Europe almost overnight in 1989. And 2 years later, the whole thing was gone. China right now is building ports, roads, and relationships across Africa, South America, and Asia. It's not invading anyone. It's just showing up with money and deals while the US has been busy elsewhere. The dollar's share of global reserves has dropped from 73% in 2001 to around 58% today. That number doesn't sound dramatic until you understand what the dollar, being the world's currency, actually means for American power. And what happens when that slowly stops being true? Stage 7 is the final stage, and I'm not going to pretend it's pretty. It's fragmentation or dramatic reduction. Spain went from controlling half the world to being a second-tier European country within about 150 years. Britain went from ruling a quarter of the globe to being a mid-sized island nation within roughly 50 years after World War II. The Soviet Union didn't fade. It collapsed in a single decade. 15 countries gone from one entity in just a few years. Now here's the thing I want to be really clear about. None of this means America is going to disappear. Countries don't just vanish. Spain still exists. Britain still exists. They still have culture, economy, people, history. What changes is the role, the influence, the power, the ability to shape what happens in the world. Going from stage 5 to stage 6 or 7 doesn't mean destruction. It means a very different kind of country than the one that existed before. And here's what makes this genuinely hard to watch. The people inside every single one of these empires, the regular citizens, didn't see it coming. Or they saw signs and assumed it would work itself out. Spanish merchants in the 1600s couldn't imagine a world where Spain wasn't the dominant power. British citizens in 1900 genuinely believed the empire would last forever. It was in their textbooks, their newspapers, their national identity. Soviet citizens were told right up until the end that they were winning. The pattern doesn't announce itself. It just keeps moving forward whether people are paying attention or not. Ray Dalio, who built one of the biggest investment firms in the world and spent years studying the rise and fall of empires, calls this the big cycle. He says empires fall when debt gets too high, when internal conflict gets too strong, and when a rising power starts to challenge the existing one. He says all three of those things are happening right now, simultaneously. That's not a political opinion. That's someone who studies historical data for a living. Peter Turchin, a complexity scientist at the University of Connecticut, built mathematical models of societal collapse using historical data from dozens of civilizations. In 2010, more than a decade ago, he predicted that the US would hit a peak of social instability around 2020. He wasn't guessing, he was following the pattern. And if you were alive in 2020, you know how that year went. The pattern is real. It's been real for centuries. And the question isn't really whether it's happening. The question is what stage you think comes next and how fast. Watch the next video on screen right now. It goes even deeper into what stage 6 actually looks like and what history says happens after.